everybody, welcome along to episode 46 of Percussion Discussion. Hope you're all well out there and enjoying our interviews. Please check out our social media. You can find us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and of course our YouTube channel. Please feel free to subscribe. Really appreciate that. This way you won't miss any of the interviews we've already done or any of the great interviews that we've got coming up. If you prefer to listen on the go, then you can find our conversations in podcast form on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. So if that's your thing, please check it out. On to today's guest, a gentleman who has been leading the way with the hybrid drumming. That's combining electronic and acoustic drums. He's taken it to a whole new level. An incredible musician, also a producer, but some of his drum and bass playing is just phenomenal. It really is. Since 2010, he has held a drum chair with the remarkable Pendulum, also Destroid as well. If you haven't heard those, check them out. It gives me great pleasure to welcome a great drummer and a great guy, Mr. KJ Sawka.
Thanks for having me on, Maddie. It's a pleasure being here.
Oh, hey, the pleasure is all mine. Trust me, it really is. So, we're in the middle of a pandemic at the moment. It's kind of live performance has gone out the window totally for now. Hopefully, say in the middle, hopefully we're at the other end of it now. How have you been? Have you been able to write, to record? What have you been doing?
I've actually stayed quite busy, and I pivoted quite a bit. Like many touring drummers and members of bands that tour on the regular, my diary was pretty full this time, or February, March last year. And then I was in Seattle, just about to play a show, and I was hesitant to go to Seattle. Is the mic level good?
Yeah, we're fine. No, it's fine.
I was hesitant to go to Seattle because I was like, everything is going to shut down. Like this is crazy. Just watching what is happening overseas and seeing the kind of the pandemonium. And I was telling the promoter and my friend in Seattle, it was like a small club gig. I'm like, I think I need to go back to LA. That I was living there at the time. I don't think the show's going to happen. He's like, what do you mean you can't pull out of the gig? I'm like, I think it's going to kill. And I need to, if you can just let's recoup some costs and things like that. I got to get back home. And I was like, I think the plane, I think the airports are going to shut down. Everything is just going to be grounded, which it was kind of for at least a week or so. And sure enough, the gig was on Friday. I was there in Seattle. I left on Wednesday. The gig canceled literally overnight. Everyone has kind of that's what happened across the whole world. And I was like, see, he's like, wow, because people were just shocked, but I was kind of off the road at the time, and I was building up my students at the time, and thank God I did that. Like I had several handfuls of students, and then we were living with some roommates at the time, which was different. My wife and I, we've lived by ourselves since we were married. And when we moved from Seattle to LA, the house that we were living in was just insanely expensive. We're like, oh my goodness, because of like where you want to live and everything. We're like, so we got some roommates, which were amazing. It was like a work house. There was art everywhere and videos happening. It was really, really cool. But we're like, pandemic is happening. We're not supposed to be around anybody. Just wash our hands and put masks on. Let's get out of here. And so we moved here to Las Vegas, which is only like 4 hours away, and for like a third or fraction of the cost. Now we're living by ourselves. Yeah. And my students kept me alive. And then I started streaming on Twitch and playing lots of live stream shows. And now I'm developing all kinds of really exciting teaching things that's going to come out soon. I can't say the word because people are going to get really excited about it. But yeah, big curriculum with teaching. And now gigs are starting to happen again. But yeah, that's kind of been my whole pandemic. It's kind of saved the relationship with myself. I've learned a lot about myself. And my wife and I have this massive rekindling and we love our dog like that much more. The dog sees us every day. You know, for dogs, I think for the pandemic, they're like, this is great. You know, they're like, my owners are home all the time. This is amazing. So, I mean, granted, there's been lots of people who've passed away. You know, I'm not the only one who, you know, I've never seen more deaths in my entire life. People close to me, dear friends, family members. It's crazy. But you know, it's the wild world that we live in.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, and thank God the orange Cheeto is out of office, so we can actually have a little bit of sense of self worth.
I've never heard it called that before. That's a good name.
Yeah, yeah. We were like, oh my God, like what's going to happen? And then it just all of a sudden changed, and we were like, oh, there might be a glimmer of hope. Yeah.
So you've been productive over COVID and lockdown and everything. That's really good. I think most people have. I mean, and I've said this a few times. Can you imagine if this was 20 years ago, before like the internet was anything like it is now? Can you imagine how tough it would have been not being able to stream? And you know, it would have been a horror show, wouldn't it? Even worse than, it's no picnic now, but you know.
Oh yeah, I think musicians would have been sleeping on the streets or something like that. Like, you know, especially like not even that long ago, 2010. Well, actually, almost my entire career is been touring. You know, you know, especially not as the main songwriter of some really, really big hits. You know, we get to share a small percentage of that publishing, but like touring is, you know, like most drummers, very, very important.
Sure.
Yeah. Plus, we need it. We physically, mentally need it. Totally. That's the most important thing.
Yeah. Now, you mentioned your teaching. When you teach, do you teach what you do, incorporating the electronics, or do you teach more traditional sort of drums? Just curious, that's all. Or do you?
Yeah. Well,
I don't know. Who knows?
All the students who come to me, I'd say it's an 80-20, 80%. They want to learn Ableton. They want to learn how to mix their drums. They want to learn how to produce music. Because I'm a producer drummer.
Yeah.
And then about 20% of the people are drummers who want to do exactly what I do. So I just teach what I do. And it works really well. And then, but I start going really, really deep into basic fundamentals and basic boom, crack, boom, like super, super basic stuff. Without that, you're not going to be on the main stage, you know, like that's my big thing. They're like, that's what every drummer's question, young drummer's question is, how do I get to that stage? Or a DJ, young DJ, you know? Yeah. So I teach what I do. So it's not that difficult, actually.
It's definitely run before you can walk. You know, it's trying to run before you can walk, isn't it? Trying to do all the fancy stuff. You need the foundations first, and then build on it. Well, I think.
Yeah, definitely. And through teaching, it's taught me a lot. It's made me be a better presenter and like understand what the heck I'm doing. Actually, really, I'm like, okay, well, this is not just a bunch of fast 16th notes. What is going on here? And so I teach pretty heavy the concept of linear drumming, and that's like a really big thing with electronic music because there needs to be space. Like a lot of times when the hi-hat hits on the snare drum, there's just too much space, or I'm sorry, there's not enough space in the mix. So you pull that hi-hat out, you know, or like boom, ka, boom, boom, ka, boom, ka, boom, boom, ka. Way too many kick drums for dance music.
Yeah.
And so extracting notes and the art of simplicity, I guess, is what I try to teach, really.
Yeah. No, it's a great. It's because you don't hear of many people teaching that style, and the fact that you've got the production side as well. You know, Ableton, I know, that seems to be the software of choice for drums, doesn't it? And for drummers, I guess, and for sequencing.
Yeah.
So it's nice to have, you know, so if anybody watching I guess they can contact you through your website if anybody thinks, "Yep, I need this." I guess I don't know. You accepting more students at the moment?
I'm always accepting students. I think the doors are kind of always open for so many drummers.
Yeah,
Like most of the drummers that I know are just you can't even count the bands that they're in on two hands.
yeah.
Everyone's like, "How do you do it? How do you have so many projects?" I'm like, "Well, first, I'm a drummer, so this is what we do." um, but yeah, the door is always open, and like it's not just about me. That's the thing.
Mm.
A lot of you know, you're either in the service industry, which is the majority of the world, building companies to serve people, or you're an artist, and sometimes it's with the artist. Just it's all about the art, and it's not necessarily giving back. And once I started giving back with education and more than just entertaining people and trying to brighten their day on the stage, I'm like, well, if I can really make an impact in this person's life and get them over their hump, whatever it may be, like that's been the biggest blessing,
Mm.
I'd say. And it's taught me so much about myself too.
Yeah.
I know that like Matt Halpern, for instance, of Periphery, we've been friends for a long time. And he says when he started doing his drum clinics on the Periphery tour, it was like the best thing he ever started doing. Because just it's a much smaller crowd, obviously, but there is so much connection and of like-minded individuals. Not just, oh my God, you're amazing. Can I get your autograph? No, it's like when you play that one beat and you're like, yeah, oh, let me tell you about how I played that beat. So yeah, there is a real true kinship with the student teacher relationship, and also just it's just human to human. It's not even that. Um, Everyone has something special to show the world and to give people, even if they're not necessarily ready. Um, yeah. So I love teaching.
Well, speaking of clinics, there's a really nice a clinic on YouTube. I think it was for the Musicians Institute a couple of years ago, 3 years ago, and it was really cool. Somebody's taken a video and put it up on YouTube. Do you enjoy doing the clinic thing?
Oh, did you see the one that I did?
Yes, yeah, that one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
MI Musicians Institute of Technology in LA.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was one of my like I've done a bunch of clinics, but that was like it was for the graduating class and there's the lights and everything. I've done a lot of Ableton clinics, and I've done a lot of Ableton clinics where I connect to the drums and stuff. And that was kind of one of the first just drum clinics that I did. And Evans came out and I had the Evans flag and the Meinl flag there, and that was really cool. And I got to go deep, like deeper than normal. It was like 2+ hours. Like, the drum major there, he had to cut me off. Actually, he's like, "We would love to keep on going, but we're going on 3 hours now." It was funny. I was loving it though.
But it's great, and as far as I'm aware, it's all up on YouTube as well for people to see. Whether that's it's really, I found it really interesting as well. It was some cool concept.
Yeah. I live really close to that school in LA, and I started doing some mentoring there, some one-on-one mentoring, right before the pandemic, actually, maybe about 6 months before. And that kind of started kind of some concepts of curriculum, and it helped me get more students on my student roster. So yeah, I think as far as the pandemic and my career, everything kind of happened in the right way. It wasn't. Yeah, I mean, everybody's diaries just went blank, So however many gigs you had on the table, it didn't really matter. Just everything went to zero. But and some students were apprehensive at first about doing like Zoom session lessons, but it's great now. Like, get my point across. Multiple cameras on the drum set and things. Yeah.
It must be great from their point of view because you've got the tech, but we all know anybody who's taught online, what you get back is something very different most of the time.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So you'll know.
I started just with my laptop camera and laptop audio, and I'm like, okay, here we go. I'm like, oh man, this is rough. internet was going in and out. But I stuck with it, and those students stuck with it too.
Yeah.
And then Roland was, like they've been so on it.
Yeah.
There's such a great partnership.
Sure.
Um, that's probably been, like I haven't been able to do too much with Tama or Meinl, but Roland, my relationship with them has really um, come up in the pandemic.
Mm. Yeah.
Yeah, because it's all digital.
Of
I
course.
could beat the crap out of my Roland drums all day, all night. It's all good. Because I could do that in my studio in LA, but we had to move to a little bit of a smaller place. We just sized down. Um, yeah.
Sure. Well, look, if you don't mind, KJ, can we go back to kind of where music began for you? I mean, what's your first memory of music, if you like?
I was like 11 years old. My brother just got a guitar, and we were into, like, I was super into um, Guns N' Roses, Metallica, Iron Maiden. Um, Probably from my brother. My brother listened to all Ozzy Osbourne, um, and I'm like, "Oh, you're playing music. I want to play some music too." And my mom and dad were like, "Well, you were beating pots and pans like when you were younger. Like your uncle Tommy has a drum set in his closet, and so I had a paper out at the time. So I saved up $300, bought this drum set. It was actually two drum sets. One was like a really old Ludwig, and they tried to wrap it, so it had like this Formica out outer wrapping that was kind of coming off, and then one of them was a really old Sparkle Pearl, and so I set them both up. So I immediately had a double bass kit,
Yeah.
super inspired by Neil Peart and yeah, Iron Maiden. Then I realized that Nico McBrain did everything with just one foot. I'm like,
Yeah.
what? Oh my goodness! And I couldn't stop playing the drums. Like that was it. Like my mom didn't have to worry about me being out, getting into trouble, doing drugs. Like there was none of that. It was just me in a room playing drums. And we fortunately would have houses that I could play like at least all day. And I'd stop at night. But yeah, I'd wrap my sticks with colored electrical tape
Yeah.
to make them like blue and yellow or red and green. Um, and then I would try to twirl the sticks all the time, and my hands were just bloody, like at 12 years old. Um, that was the biggest thing. I played like 8 to 12 hours a day, probably 8 hours, because my band instructor was like, had us fill out these little time cards for practice. He's like, if you don't practice, you're just not going to get better. And that was it. Let's see here. Yeah, I taught one of the drummers in the concert band how to play just boom, crack, boom, really simple beat. And when I taught him that, I just started excelling.
Yeah.
Probably because I played 8 hours a day. But everything was new. Every single beat, even these super basic beats, were new and exciting. And yeah, I owe it to that. Some people are like, "Oh, you have a gift, or you're lucky, or whatever like that." My gift was my brain, and everything around me just wanted me to stay in that room and play drums for 8 hours a day.
Yeah.
I mean, that's how you get good at anything. You have to put in the work.
Absolutely. I mean, the influences you've given there are pretty much almost identical to mine. Not that that's evident in my drumming these days, but as a kid,
Yeah.
when I had hair, it was pretty long. Not that I can remember that, but where did the drum and bass style thing come from? Because that, not particularly related to any of the influences that you've mentioned.
Oh, exactly. Yeah. Well, so Rush started getting Neil Peart. It was like mid-tempo stuff, rock drumming, but it started to creep the tempo up for me. I'm like, oh. And then when I heard Dave Matthews Band, Carter Beauford, ambidextrous playing and had the ride cymbal over here and was playing these hi-hat parts with his left hand on a right-handed kit, I'm like, whoa. And then I started hearing all these offbeats, with his left hand. I'm like, wow, that's something that I've never heard before. So I set up. I had my two drum sets. At that point, I got this brand new um, um, uh, double bass. What was the name? I'll think of the name. But I had toms like Neil Peart. Like I had coffee cans up here on like stands, rototoms, and then 10, 12, 14, and 15, and then two floor toms, different colors and everything.
Yeah.
And I broke the kit up, and I had a left-handed kit and a right-handed kit. So I started playing on the left-handed kit as much as I could, playing these tom fills that were like right-hand lead. I'm like, ooh, that is so syncopated. Wow. Something that you just don't normally hear. It was like like all these upbeats were happening. And then I started getting better at hitting the crash with my left, just really, really focusing on that. So bringing in the left, just my whole left body into the drumming equation. But then I heard Primus.
Yeah.
Yeah, Tim Herb Alexander. So Tim Herb Alexander and I, we actually have a band together, a duo project. He hit me up out of the blue saying, "Hey, I really dig your stuff. We should jam sometime." And I'm like, Tim Alexander, why does that sound so familiar? I'm like, yeah, cool. What do you play? He's like, I play drums. I'm like, Herb Alexander? I mean, you got to be kidding me. And he's like, yeah, I just saw some of your YouTubes and I think they're amazing. Like, we should do something. And he was kind of wanting to get into the drum and bass and stuff like that. And this was maybe 5 years ago or so. But anyways, his drumming, that kind of, now a lot of his drumming is like mid-tempo as well. It was funky, and it was like, it was high pitched, and it was lending itself to higher tempo
Yeah.
stuff, because all the stuff that I listened to was all rock, normal tempo, 120, things like that. And I started experimenting with a little bit higher tempos. And then when I was 18 years old, after having all these influences, my friend's cousin came over from London, and he had a bag of drum and bass, of techno. Let's see here, Chemical Brothers, LTJ Bookham, who was this old drum and bass. And when I heard that, just that real simple boom, ka, boom, like 160, I was like, what? I've never heard that beat in my entire life. And it was so like cut and chopped because it was produced.
Yeah. Sure.
And so I started to try to emulate that. I put t-shirts, towels, socks, my wallet on the drums to try to dampen them. And I'm like, I'm starting to figure out how to get that sound. And granted, they're just chopping these samples, of like live drummers and stuff like that, grabbing the snare, grabbing the kick, grabbing the hi-hat. But I was trying to do it myself, and then I started picking up the tempo. And then I boycotted rock music and guitar music for at least like 3 or 4 years, and only listened and played drum and bass. Probably maybe 18 to like 22 or something like that.
Wow, that's some. It's a total turnaround, isn't it, from everything you've ever listened to? All of a sudden, gone all in.
Oh, I was absolutely hooked. Yeah, drum and bass was like, for a lot of the fans of drum and bass and people who produce drum and bass, a lot of them have a similar story. Like, it just like grabbed them, and people are still diehard drum and bass heads, if you will. A lot of them are older.
Well, yeah, of course. I mean, the only person I've really, I mean, I'm sure there are a lot, but I hear Jojo Mayer. I've seen him with Nerve a few times, and it's kind of a similar vibe you've both got. Obviously, he doesn't do so much with the electronics, but would you agree it's a similar-ish kind of thing going on?
Yeah, he definitely mixes jazz with the drum and bass stuff. Like, he loves doing these jungle patterns really fast, break beats, and a lot of notes. And it's very jazzy, washy, and it's so cool. His technique is unbelievable. He was one of the very first people that I saw do the push pull. I'm
Yeah.
like, and he has a video on it. He's like, this, you just do this. And I'm like, yeah, just do that. Like, if you do that for 10 years, then you'll get 16th notes with one hand at 200 beats per minute. I'm still doing push pull every single day, and I still haven't brought it out of the bag onto the drum set on stage yet. Like I could do it, like with confidence, 150, but 180 doing 16th notes, no way.
No,
Not yet.
That's
Practice pad.
frightening thought, that, isn't it? It really is. I mean, you're highly respected for doing the hybrid thing. What was it that got you into adding the electronics? Was there like one point where you went, I need more than the acoustic kit can give me?
Let's see here. When I was 18, when I started to get into electronic music and drum and bass, I also got these beat machines. So that's when I started producing music as well. This little Yamaha QI70, a thing about that big, really small, and it had a little keyboard on it. It had everything. You could compose full songs.
Yeah.
And I would stay up like all night long, just like, this is brand new to me. I never wrote a song before, like in its entirety. I would pluck on my bass player's bass when he was gone and strum the guitar and things like that. And we had like a 4-track recorder and things like that. And I was kind of trying to do my own music, but nothing like that. I'm like, oh my goodness, I just wrote a drum and bass song. This is crazy. And then I started connecting it to the drum set with Pintech piezo pickups, little triggers. I just stuck them on with like duct tape, and I realized I couldn't do a roll. I couldn't even play eighth notes. Couldn't do anything. So I'm like, oh, what can I do? So I put on bass sounds and vocals and pew, pew, pew. I'm like, wow, I can play bass lines and play the drums at the same time. And then I got a older SPD-20, the Roland one, the square one. And that changed everything for me. You could only use the internal sounds, but I tweaked those internal sounds. I pitched them up, pitched them down. I had the thing was maxed out with external trigger inputs and switching patches, like a jungle patch, a 61, and then 60 was the halftime patch. And I started recording my own music. And at that time also, like, my band was doing good, and then we broke up. And then I'm like, man, we just put in like 4 years of like every single day practicing and writing songs, and then it's totally done. Like, this is crazy. I didn't understand, and I didn't know what to do. So I'm like, I'm just gonna write songs myself. KJ Sawka will never die. If I die, then it'll finally die. It'll never break up. And to this day, make my own music and do my own thing. And that's my longest lasting project by far. It will be my longest lasting project.
Because I mean, it's great. I mean, do you use? I guess you trigger as well as using the acoustic sound. Do you mix them both generally? Is that the way it works?
It depends. A lot of my live streams have been just on the Roland TD50.
Okay.
Oh man, it's just it's ridiculous. And I never played just electronic drums like that until last year, because there was this disconnect. Like, I've always been an acoustic player, and then with the addition of the electronics, I love the little buzz rolls and like the dynamics that you can get with the kick drum and the cymbals. You can't really get that on electronic drums. And then Michael Shack and I started doing some festivals together, and we started doing with the support of Roland. And he's like, hey, we're going to do it on TD50 kits. I'm like, wow, I've never done just electronics. So I think it was the London Drum Show, which it wasn't the London Drum Show, it was the Manchester Show or something like that.
UK Drum Show.
UK Drum Show, that's it.
Yeah.
That was literally, which wasn't that long ago at all, only 2 or 3 years ago. That was the very first time that I did solely electronic drums, which is surprising now, because I've been doing it it just seems like it's a part of me now. But yeah, I was so used to not playing. Um, I was so confused. I was like, why on an electronic drum set are they trying to emulate an acoustic drum set? I don't understand that. It doesn't make any sense to me. Because when I think of electronic drums, I think of really huge kicks and snares and that are cut, that are perfectly, produced and everything, made to deliver this sound of a fully produced electronic sound.
Mm.
Um, and but now I understand how it's really fun to play with the acoustic sounds on
Mm.
electronic kit. So I think that was a battle for me for a really long time. I'm like, why are they making these kits just sound acoustic? Why don't you just go get a regular acoustics kit?
Yeah.
Uh,
And I always think
um,
there's always a little bit of a stigma attached to electronic drum kits. It's always like, oh, it's not the same. But these days, I think it's getting less. I think people are kind of open to the fact that yeah, he plays on e drums. It's cool. You know, I think it's there's a lot of benefits from it as well, isn't there? Let's be honest.
well, you can keep on playing throughout the night. It doesn't matter if you live in an apartment or housing complex or whatever. Because let's face it, drums, they're loud, they're obnoxious. You have to it's a physical like instrument, like you have to it's very athletic, you have to be an athlete. you know Playing practicing 8 hours a day is not like practicing guitar 8 hours a day.
Yeah.
I have like this iWatch, and the calories and everything, I don't know if it's true, but it just goes through the roof when I practice.
Yeah.
It's just this this motion makes it go crazy. um, but yeah, I mean, everyone's just, after practicing 4 hours, like 4 hours these days, that's a really heavy practice session. I don't practice 4 hours straight these days.
Yeah.
I wish I could. Um, but on electronic drums, though, it's less fatiguing, I'd
Yeah.
say. Play quiet, play loud. The only thing that fatigues is like my ears with the headphones.
Yeah.
Um, yeah. Um, yeah. Even with Pendulum, everything is hybrid. Actually, that's not true with Shaq. Actually, that I said the very first time that I did just electronic drums was with Destroid, the crazy
Yeah.
robot band,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
dubstep band. Yeah, that was only electronic drums. Well, with two huge crash cymbals on top,
Right.
and but that was like, oh my goodness, it was like I didn't play any drum rolls. There was no acoustic sounds. It was just boom, crack, boom, crack, doom, doom, boom, crack, do 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 boom, crack, like very very straight ahead, no rolls.
Yeah. That's a great. I
Yeah,
mean, it's a put it down. What a song that is! It's just
nice.
some cool stuff on there. I have to say, there really is. It's
Yeah, thank you. Um, that is, it's a really fun project, and
yeah.
still to this day, there's super fans who want me to play those songs and want me to talk about how we produce those songs and
Mm,
things. And yeah, it
yeah.
was a real good project. Hopefully, we'll still be doing some stuff like
Hope.
Pendulum. Pendulum will never die.
No, gosh. Well, let's talk Pendulum. I mean, you followed a great drummer in Paul Kodish as well. I mean, Paul, great player. But you've slotted straight in. I mean, was it
Yeah.
2010 you joined? Have I got that right? Was it 2009?
2009, and then we hit the stage in 2010. Yep.
Yeah. I mean,
Yep.
there's one performance that sticks in my mind, and it was Glastonbury 2011.
Nice.
And I remember you doing watercolor just as the sun was going down. It was a beautiful day. I was at home watching it on TV, and I was just thinking, I want to be there. Can you remember that? Have you got memories of that day?
Oh my goodness. Yeah. I mean, um, it was a legendary moment. It was probably the biggest, most grandiose show ever. There was Beyonce, who played right after us,
Yeah.
and she had this lion's mane, like, oh my goodness, and she had these heels, and she was like, I'm a pretty short guy, and she was just like towering, and then she had like that is what sticks out in my mind is her whole entourage going to stage. And Nikki, I forget the drummer's Nikki Nikki something, the drummer, who I'm kind of friends with. She had the Zelgian cymbals that went down like that, and
Oh, yeah.
all female band. man, playing right before her, that was one of the pinnacle things in my whole career. But at the time, I think the like I don't know if Rob liked it, because it wasn't our typical crowd.
Yeah.
Like it was filled with parents and kids and things like that. But it's Glastonbury,
Yeah.
like, and after watching the footage, like, look at there's a pit, there's a pit, there's a pit, there's a pit. It's not just about people raging to the music. And now I think everyone gets it. But I was just like, oh, what did we just do? Like that was the biggest show on earth, and to kind of almost co-headline it was a great honor. My goodness, and yeah, I
And
mean,
to,
we
and
went.
to do it on a nice day as well. That's really difficult to do at Glastonbury. It's usually raining, so
Yeah, just going back to a hotel in an Addie Lee, like I'm like, what had just happened?
oh, did,
Yeah,
did you manage to watch it back that evening, or I guess it was a little bit later on when you watched it back?
it was later. Yeah, and then the camera angles of going through the crowd, and the crowd just never stopped.
Yeah.
It looked like 100,000 people, and I guess it was something like that. Um, yeah, it was. Yeah, that was a moment for sure. That's what life is about, I guess. Um, Finding those moments, big or small. A lot of people are like, you know, I'll play a coffee shop, I'll play, a drum clinic, and there's 10 drummers there, and I'll play a club where there's 50 people there or less. People are like, well, wait a minute, but you play Glastonbury and all these big shows. I'm like, for one, I'm a drummer. Like we just love to play, and it's not like Pendulum is coming.
Mm.
Like the Pendulum is the band that plays the big shows. Destroid is the band that plays the big shows. KJ Sawka, I play small, medium, large shows, and it's humbling and it keeps me grounded. And I think that's why drummers, as a culture, were approachable and friendly and would love to have a conversation, because we understand that once we get off the big stage, we're going to go back to normal life, and we might go play a coffee house show for 10 people because we love to play. Yeah. Yeah. And
Well,
yeah.
that sums it up pretty much, doesn't it? From Glastonbury to a coffee house with 10 people. Look, KJ, this has been an absolute pleasure, and the time has gone really very quickly indeed.
My goodness, it has.
It's
Yeah.
flown. That's a sign of a good conversation, I think. Well, I hope it is anyway. But you've been so kind, and a big shout out to Perry, of course, guitarist from Pendulum, for fixing this up. If you see this, Perry, thank you very much. A fellow Welshman, of course.
Yes.
So yeah, KJ, let's hope we see you back over in the UK soon, and hope you get out gigging again. And I will put your website at the end of this interview, so people will be able to see and perhaps get in touch if they want to. A lesson in.
I'm easy to get a hold of.
Cool.
Very easy. People can message me on Twitter, Instagram. It's just KJ Sawka at everything. Facebook. My website has an email. It's just KJ Sawka Gmail. Like, I don't mind giving it out. Yep.
Fantastic.
Easily approachable, easy to find.
Yeah. Well, it's been a total pleasure. KJ, thanks so much for your time. Really appreciate it.
All right, Maddie. Absolute pleasure.
See you soon. Take care. Thank you. Bye-bye.